watching Newsday. A few days ago, a forum of eminent Nigerians converged on Lagos to rub minds on the state of the nation. And at the end of their deliberations, the call for a comprehensive reworking of the country's constitution became almost unanimous. This was one of the resolutions of the National Constitutional Dialogue on the Future of Nigeria, organized by the Emeka Anyaoku-led The Patriots. The gathering was to commemorate 10 years anniversary of the 2014 National Confab in honor of late eminent jurist Professor Ben Nwabweze, senior advocate of Nigeria. What's wrong with the 1999 Constitution? Is the problem with the Constitution or they operate as well? Constitutional lawyer Kunle Adegoke, senior advocate of Nigeria, joins us now to discuss this call. Good afternoon and welcome to Newsday. So what are your take on this?
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Very good, sir. So what is wrong with the 1999 Constitution in its current form?
Right. Thank you very much. There has been a lot of agitations on the issue of the viability of the 1999 Constitution in its present form. And the agitations cannot just be dismissed with a wave of the hand. The reason being that the origin of the Constitution itself is quite questionable. If a nation is emerging from a militarized society, which is known for its unitary structure and system, definitely such a society may not be able to have a constitution that is going to be very much far away from its military background in terms of its unitary structure. And to this extent, we will see that powers concentrated in the federal government makes the distribution of legislative powers to be a lot lopsided in favor of the center as against the states and the local governments. In Nigeria, we are supposed to have 3 tiers of government. There has been a lot of argument on whether there is we are running a 2-tier system or a 3-tier system in terms of the recognition of the local government as a 3rd tier of government. Well, this may not be so much of a matter of substance, except when we look at the powers vested in the 3 levels of government. However, it is not disagreeable that powers are concentrated in the center at the expense of the state, contrary to what we had in the 1960-1963 constitutions, in which Nigeria was able to develop at the level of the regions, and it was what the regions earned that were donated or contributed to the purse of the federal government that made the funds of the federal government then. Unlike now, where the fiscal powers are concentrated to a large extent in the federal government, and a situation where the federal government takes about 60-something% of the revenue accruable to the federation, and about 30-something% is being shared between the state government and the local governments. There is no doubt about it that too much powers and fiscal powers are concentrated in the federal government. This is an aspect that recently there have been efforts towards creating a balance, but which may not take the rapid form that can guarantee such a federal structure that we are actually struggling to achieve. And in this situation, you can see some recent developments of moving some legislative powers, some legislative items from the exclusive legislative list to probably the concurrent legislative list, or even giving more powers to the states. For instance, the Electricity Act, sequel to the amendment of the Constitution, by which now the state governments have the powers to establish and run electric powers, not only limited to areas not covered by the national grid, contrary to what it used to be before. And also, when you look at the issue of fundamental rights, you agree with me that when we are talking about fundamental rights, right to life, right to privacy, and what have you, all these rights contained in Chapter 4 of the Constitution will not have any meaning until the corollaries, the requirements, the necessary incidentals to the fulfillment of such powers, of such rights, can be guaranteed. For instance, if there is no right to food, right to adequate shelter, and whatever, you cannot be talking about right to meaningful life to anybody. Somebody who is very hungry, situations where we have extreme poverty. If you go into the hinterland, away from places like Lagos, Port Harcourt, and whatever, even in places like Lagos, there are some areas where you can still see what can be identified as a kind of extreme poverty. And in such a situation, right to life cannot be meaningful to such people. So that is why we are agitating that the fundamental objectives contained in Chapter 2, whereby we are talking about right to better economic life, we are talking about right to education, we are talking about right to adequate participation in the political environment, right to social policies, social attainments of the people. All this must be regarded as part of the fundamental rights to give meaning to the fundamental rights as contained in Chapter 4. Another area where the Constitution is deficient and which the level of insecurity in the nation is projecting forward every day is with the issue of policing of Nigeria. We all know that we have only, by virtue of Section 214 of the Constitution, we have only one federal police institution, Nigerian Police Force. And this is supervised at the topmost level by the Inspector General of Police. Now, where the policing powers is concentrated in the center, and anybody can be moved from Sokoto to Calabar to go and serve there without knowing the terrain. And there is no right of state policing or even local government policing. There is no way that you can guarantee that crime can be adequately prevented or detected. And that is why it is important that there must be amendment of the Constitution. Recently, the president, floated the idea that there must be state police because the level of criminalities, the level of insecurity in our society, in the various states, is becoming something that if we are not going to descend to a banana island, a banana republic status. I'm sorry, the people of Banana Island should not be angry about this. To Indeed. Banana republic status, then it is imperative that our policing system must be reformed by an amendment of the Constitution. There are so many other areas where the Constitution is defective, and until we are able to carry out comprehensive amendments to such provisions, or that we are able to either disband the current system by ensuring that there is adequate participation of all peoples, not based on just state participation alone, but ethnic nationalities, whereby they will be able to project forward the interests of the people and how best this can be guaranteed. If the Constitution of Nigeria today, for instance, this is another area of inadequacy. If the Constitution maintains by Section 2 that Nigeria is one indissoluble nation and doesn't provide for means or procedure by which a people or a particular sector of the nation, a federating people, can choose to say at this particular point we want to have a nation of our own, and it doesn't provide for a peaceful means by which this can be guaranteed, there will always be frictions that will be leading to violence, killings, and bloodshed. And to avoid this, it is imperative that we look at that provision of Section 2 that says that Nigeria is one indissoluble, indestructible entity that doesn't make provision for the procedure by which a people can advance the right to self-determination. There have been many occasions where, on so many occasions we hear from the Arewa People's Congress or whatever agitating that, yes, if Nigeria cannot work, they want to go on their own. The Biafra agitators are there. We have the Odua nation and what have you. If the Constitution provides for a procedure to determine peacefully whether a people can separate from Nigeria, you see that some of these agitations might be completely quenched. For instance, let me give you one. Tomorrow now, if we provide for referendum or plebiscite, these are political procedures for determining whether a nation or a nation in a country, because I want to take the definition of a nation here to mean the ethnic nationalities, maybe the Yoruba nation, the Igbo nation, the Arewa nation, or Ijo, Ibibio, and what have you. Now, if a people can be entitled to right to call for plebiscite that can be supervised by international organs like the United Nations and what have you, it can be safely and easily determined that, okay, these people in this particular area as done in 1960, in 1959-60, if my recollection is right, with the people of the southern part of Cameroon, who formed part of Nigeria before, but when they decided that no, they wanted to be on their own, then a plebiscite was conducted, and they were able to have a separate nation of their own. If we say Nigeria is indissoluble entity and will not tolerate any agitation by which people can determine whether they want to be on their own, definitely we are only calling for crisis on our own earth. Tomorrow now, if you subject it to plebiscite, that okay, people of the Igbo nation should decide whether they want to be part of Nigeria or they want to have a nation of their own. You might find a situation that the majority may say they prefer to be in Nigeria rather than having a Biafra. And that will silence the people who are agitating. And if people who are agitating are in the majority by virtue of the plebiscite, why not allow such to just take place peacefully, so that there is no sense in remaining one single entity by force that may lead to bloodshed and what may even be characterized as genocide, because a situation where that is allowed, then we have descended below the level of humanity. So these are some of the provisions. Going to the political level, to some of the political angle that may require some intervention. For instance, if you look at, yes, sir.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Thank you so much, for the very detailed explanation that you have given us. But, I just want to play a bit of a devil's advocate here. I'm wondering how you react to the argument of some conservatives that our problem is not actually the Constitution, but the crooked nature of the current crop of our ruling class. How would you react to that?
Well, there is substance in their position too, but I do not think that it comprehends the problem that we are having with respect to the constitutional structure of Nigeria. If you look at it, you agree with me that there is a difference between what we call a constitution and what we call constitutionalism. A constitution is a document that contains the rules, regulations by which a particular country chooses to organize itself and to have its people governed, to have its affairs conducted. But what is called constitutionalism is the spirit of constitution. Do people who are implementing the constitution, do they actually have what we call the spirit of the Constitution? If they do not imbibe constitutionalism, the spirit of the Constitution, it will be difficult, if not impossible, for such a people to effectively implement a document that claims to be the origin of all other laws. No matter how beautiful the provisions contained in that Constitution may be, if the people that are going to implement it are people below the standard of the Constitution itself, definitely the Constitution will be rendered useless. No matter how beautiful the injunctions in the Quran and the Bible are today, if the Christians and the Muslims who claim to be the adherents of these two religious faiths do not actually imbibe what is contained in the two holy books, definitely the essence of religion, the essence of being godly will be rendered useless. And you now find a situation where, like in Nigeria, where we are so religious, but we are not godly. Majority of our people will rather commit crimes and take the money of proceeds of crime to the church or to the mosque to go and build a mosque or build a church or donate to a pastor who will now be preaching prosperity at the expense of salvation. We have a situation at hand where some provisions have been made in the Constitution that the operators of the Constitution have not been adhering to. For instance, Section 81 of the Constitution requires that allocations to the judiciary, to the various levels, to the National Assembly and to the judiciary should go directly to the National Judicial Council down to the heads of such courts. We still have a situation where monies meant for the judiciary are being kept by the governor at the expense of the judiciary, and now, doling out such money at his own pleasure, thereby pocketing the CJ, the Chief Judge of the state, to be at his beck and call. It is of recent that we hear the president himself joining the agitation that the emoluments and remuneration of the justices of the Supreme Court and judges generally should be improved upon. That should not be something that should call for a presidential or executive intervention where there is a call, where a situation is presenting itself, now requiring an executive intervention before another arm of government can perform its functions by being adequately funded. You find a situation where such arm of government will be dependent on the benevolent arm of government that is superior, that is stronger. The three arms of government are supposed to be equal. They are it's a tripartite of equal organs. One should not be superior to the other. But we have found a situation where the judiciary has been so dehumanized, has been so brutalized, has been so ridiculed that the ability to dispense justice fairly when it involves the interest of the executive is something that some judges will be afraid to do. And in a situation of that nature, you discover that it is not the problem of the Constitution now, because the Constitution, as amended, as altered, has indicated that funds meant should go directly from the federation account, from the consolidated revenue account, directly to the heads of the government, of the judiciary, and not through the governor. But rather than this being implemented, it is being abused, and we find a situation where the judiciary is dependent on the executive. The same thing happens with the local government. The local government is the closest level of government to the people at the grassroots level. In the olden days, we used to have a situation where local government authorities were tarring roads, paying salaries of teachers, maintaining
Very good.
school
Mr.
structures.
Adegoke, unfortunately, I have to interject here because we're running out of time. Mr. Kunle Adegoke, SAN, is a legal practitioner, and he's been giving us insight on the prospects for amendment, or as it were, regarding the 1999 Constitution. We'd like to thank you very much for your time.